The full-time whistle has just blown at the Aviva Stadium. These are my hot takes following Leinster against La Rochelle. And as a wise man once said, you and me got a whole lot of history. Actually, it wasn't a wise man at all, was it? That was some One Direction lyrics. But it's apt in this case because there's a lot of water gone under the bridge between these two. And payback hurts, doesn't it? Because congratulations to, and if you don't want to know the result, please avert your gaze and your ears. Well done to Leinster. A deserved victory. And it wasn't just a victory, was it? It was an absolute beatdown. 40 points to 13 it finished at the Aviva Stadium. I mean, I predicted a Leinster victory. I think I said by 8 or 9. But I'm not sure many people would have been backing Leinster at a 27-point handicap. That was a statement victory and a completely dominant performance. In every facet of their game, they were the better team. And that's the best that I've seen Leinster play for quite some time. That's Leinstertainment. Paul Weller. As Paul Weller said, kind of. So let's get into this game then. I mean, one of the men you can see on your screen there, well, but in fact, both of them deserve a lot of credit. Ross Byrne, he's still carrying the shadow of Johnny Sexton with him wherever he goes. Jack Crowley handled that really well in an Irish jersey. And there's a lot of pressure coming into this game for Ross Byrne, and he handled it brilliantly. And, you know, I wondered if Harry Byrne maybe deserved the nod. I think a lot of people were saying likewise, but he absolutely vindicated his selection. And as for Jamison Gibson Park, we're just living in a Jamison Gibson Park universe. It's his world. We're living in it. And I don't want to get ahead of myself with the semi-finals in a few weeks' time, but the prospect of Jamison Gibson Park and Antoine Dupont, the two best scrum halves in the world, going head-to-head, that is mouth-watering. But that is getting ahead of myself. A lot of rugby to be played before then, because a lot of people were thinking Bordeaux were going to win, and they did not earlier. By the way, if you appreciate the rugby content, make sure you hit subscribe in the channel. Leave your comments down below. How are you feeling, Leinster fans? Does it feel sweet? Does it ease the pain of the last couple of years? Or actually, are you just focused on the Tottenham Stadium at the end of next month and making sure you get that 5th star upon your chest? Well, it took a big step towards it today. And I've already mentioned Ross Byrne. He got the wagons rolling with a penalty on 8 minutes. And I was sort of thinking that Leinster were being a little bit wasteful with a lot of their possession and territory. And La Rochelle was just being nuggety and managing to hold them out. But eventually the dam had to break, and it was James Lowe who went over in the corner. Classic Leinster shape and Ireland shape, to be fair. Ross Byrne with a little inventive tip-on pass, and the pressure eventually told. The early stages, like the Quins Bordeaux game earlier, was like two fighters just going out there and swinging haymakers from minute one. This one was a little bit more kind of just dancing around the ring a little bit, feeling each other out. But then, bosh, the big punches came flying, and there was one for this try for James Lowe. Unfortunately, Leinster's restarts let them down a little bit and kept La Rochelle in touch. 2 penalties came from restarts. There was a couple more penalties for Ross Byrne. And then Jamison Gibson Park. That was a big moment, wasn't it? Which put them, I'm just trying to get, again, I'm just coming straight off the full-time whistle, so trying to make sense. Oh yeah, that was just before half-time, wasn't it? 38 minutes on the clock. Jamison Gibson Park goes over. The TMO had a look at it because it was a little chicken wing offload from James Lowe, bounced off Jamison Gibson Park's shoulder straight into his hands. That tells you we're living in a Jamison Gibson Park world where everything he does just comes off, and he's always running those support lines. He's just playing outrageous rugby at the minute. I was actually quite impressed with La Rochelle. In some parts they were clearly the second best team, but they were just hanging in there, and they were getting wagons rolling with Will Skelton and Weenie Antonio starting to chug it up a little bit. Skelton is just, he's a beast of a man, but he's also just kind of shithousery in a way you quite like. Unless he's playing against your team, you quite like to watch it, the way he just lies on people when they're on the floor. There's 150 kilos of him. It's quite hard to get rid of. But yeah, it was that period just before half-time was really, really important. 43rd minute, so deep into the red at this point, and a juggernaut maul pays off and makes it a 10-point game. 23 points to 13 at half-time. Leinster had been 17 points down. know exactly about being 17 points up. They know all about being 17 points up and where that can get you. And then La Rochelle go and claw 7 of those points back. When I think about the first half generally, it was clear and I don't want to talk just about Jacques Nienaber and Stuart Lancaster and stuff, because that sort of overlooks the overall control that Leo Cullen has. He's clearly a brilliant rugby mind, Leo Cullen, who deserves ultimately the credit for putting this team out there on the field. But Stuart Lancaster kind of felt like his influence revolutionised the attack of Leinster back in from 2016 onwards. And now you feel there's an edge and a real bite to the defence. And you can only put 2 and 2 together and assume that that's the influence of Jacques Nienaber. The blitz defence was just cutting these big La Rochelle men in two, and you can see the impact that had on them, because they were playing. Well, they had men that were injured out there on the pitch because Leinster just ground La Rochelle into dust slowly. And really important moment at the start of the second half. That was the try at the end of the first half for La Rochelle. Second half began, and that was a massive moment. Maybe the biggest moment of the game, because 10 points, La Rochelle will have gone in, had a break, had a team talk, come up with their tactical tweaks they're going to make. But what they cannot bank on is the fact that Ryan Baird is just... Leinster have got some freaks on the wing. Dan Sheehan and Ryan Baird on the wing. I think they could legitimately be international wingers or centres. They are just class. And Ryan Baird was out there. Admittedly, Antoine Hastoy, he should have made the tackle, and then he kicked the ball out on the full afterwards just to rub salt in the La Rochelle wound. Tawera Kerr-Barlow took a knock to the head, so one player who went off at that point. 30 points to 13. 36 minutes to go. A mountain to climb for La Rochelle, which only got bigger. Leinster scrum penalty. Jamison Gibson Park turnover. He can do absolutely anything he wants. Big defence. And Josh van der Fleer coming off the bench, smashing 7 bells out of La Rochelle. And Jordan Lama, Kieran Frawley playing really well. And a try from Dan Sheehan. Again, Baird and Sheehan on the wing. You love to see it. And then James Lowe, just the icing on the cake, 40 points to 13, an absolute beatdown. And like I say, that the physical onslaught that Leinster gave them meant that La Rochelle were just running on fumes and had men with one leg, basically. Like Jack Knoll chucking a hospital pass to Ihia West, who had one hamstring, and the other one was made out of paper. Just kind of summed up the moment. Just La Rochelle are not as good as they have been the last 2 years. That is clear. But Leinster have stepped on in a lot of ways, and the bite and the edge in their performance, the physicality that they brought, it was oppressive. They were just in your face. And in Jamison Gibson Park, they've got a man who just makes that team tick. In the bench, when it was emptied, made massive impact. Josh van der Fleer. I did say in the build-up video, in the preview video, that don't think we shouldn't anymore in rugby think of the people that are on the replacements bench as the second choice in their position, because there are specific roles that they can do, and Leinster can just drop the hammer on 50 minutes when they empty the bench. It's quite something. Just a little thing, because I want to stay in the positive. La Rochelle were not good. They'll need to go away and have a serious look at themselves. They're currently in the playoff spots in the top 14, but they're not looking like they're going to challenge unless they turn things around. So they've got a bit of soul searching to do. And just another point which I want to make constructive, but English referees are generally excellent. I don't know. I don't want to make it personal, because it's not personal, but I'm not a massive fan of Carl Dixon, which I know that's not a very constructive thing to say. I'll put it positively. Luke Pearce would have been available to referee a game. Why is Luke Pearce not refereeing games? He's about as good as it gets right now. There was just the advantage. Can we just talk about advantage for a second? When there's a penalty advantage, I can understand leaving it a bit longer. Maybe you go back a bit further. But there was a couple of advantages. One advantage where James Lowe gets held up over the try line. There's an element of me where I'm going, how much more advantage do you want than having the ball over the try line and be in a position to put it down only for the opposition to hold you up? It sort of feels like you're just dishing out get out jail free cards. And the worst one was a knock-on advantage. James Lowe in his own 22, or not far from his own 22, wallops the ball, win behind it, goes dead, and Leinster get the scrum back in their own 22 rather than a La Rochelle scrum. Look, none of this would have made any difference to the result. Leinster were miles ahead the best team. So I'm making a broader point that I'm making the game make sense to people who might. I mean, there's a lot of people, if they were casual rugby fans and just tuning in to watch the rugby today, they will have been properly entertained, and that's great. A brilliant spectacle for club rugby so far. But I just have to say, there's some things where I know my rugby, and I'm looking at it, scratching my head, going, how is advantage not over the second James Lowe opted to kick it from a knock-on advantage? But anyway, I'm getting into the weeds. We can save this for another day. For now, well done Leinster. Enjoy that one. And James Lowe scored a try at the end. And a cracking atmosphere, it sounded like. And I've just hit record immediately after the full-time whistle, so I've probably missed a bit of Sweet Caroline being played in the stadium and all the other belters that get played. It's going to be a good night. Ballsbridge will be bouncing right now, and well deserved.